To get better at playing jazz, there are building blocks you can practice and learn that will make a real difference. This lesson focuses on adding 2/5 lines to your solos to make your blues sound more like jazz, and I'll show you exactly which building blocks to practice to play them fluently. All the examples are on guitar, but the concepts apply to other instruments too. Hi jazz people, and welcome to Teaching Jazz. Today we're talking about how to practice 2/5s in the blues. This lesson builds on parts 1, 2 and 3 of this series, but you can watch it on its own if you prefer. I do recommend checking out at least 1 or 2 of the earlier lessons. Links are in the description. Now, let's get on with the lesson. This is all about being systematic and giving you a method where you can cumulatively build your skills. The first thing you'll need to practice is a minor 7 arpeggio, and you'll need at least 2 positions or fingerings for it. Here's the first example we'll use today. It's a minor 7 on the 5th string. In this example, I play an F minor 7 arpeggio from the 5th string over 2 octaves. There are 3 things you'll need to practice with this. First, you should be able to split it into separate octaves, so the low octave, like this, and the higher octave, like this. The second thing you need to practice with this is playing different inversions. That just means starting and ending on different notes, not just the root or octave, so like this. There are other ways you can play arpeggios, so feel free to use whatever suits you best. But the point is to be consistent and systematic. Learn one way first and stick to it for a while. Don't use random fingerings. Let your fingers and muscles really learn one way first, then add more. Okay, now that we've looked at the minor 7 starting on the 5th string, now add another fingering. In this example, we're thinking of the root note as being on the 6th string. Go through the same 3 steps as before. 2 octaves. Separate the octaves. And inversions, starting on the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. Two 5-chord progressions are made up of a minor 7 chord and a dominant 7 chord. We've so far covered 2 useful fingerings for the minor 7. That raises the question, what about the dominant 7? So let's look at that next. For the dominant 7, you'll need the basic pattern plus an altered pattern. I've made a whole video about that, so I won't go into too much detail now. Watch that if you need to, the link's in the description. Oh, and the description is probably down there if you're watching on a phone or computer, and maybe over there on a TV. Click on the box with the video title and you'll see it plus the comments. Leave a comment while you're there, even if just to say hi. It helps me out if you can do that. Here are a 6th string and a 5th string pattern for dominant 7 arpeggios. In each example, I'll show you 2 octaves or nearly 2 octaves, separate octaves and inversions. Practice all of those things systematically. B flat dominant 7, thinking from a 6th string root. Low octave, high octave, and inversions. Dominant 7, thinking from a 5th string root. Low octave, high octave, inversions, Those are the basic dominant 7s. They don't actually sound that great if you solo with them on their own. It often leads to a kind of beginnerish sound, but they are the foundation for what follows. So get them under your fingers. Jazz players often alter these dominant 7s to make them sound more interesting and to enhance the level of tension they create. That way, when they resolve into another chord, the effect is more dramatic and it helps propel the solo along by giving it a kind of harmonic energy. A sense of forward motion is usually a good thing in improvising styles that use these kinds of lines. So, altered chords are great for that. Alteration means sharpening or flattening a chord tone or extension to create tension. We'll focus on the flat 9 and sharp 5 since they were used in earlier lessons. Okay, thinking from the 6th string but focusing on notes from the higher strings, here's a fingering for B flat 7, flat 9. It's nearly identical to a diminished 7 arpeggio. Watch that other video to see what that's about. First, low octave. Next, a higher octave. And while we're here, B flat sharp 5, aka augmented. If you've been following the lessons, the B flat 7 sharp 5 was in line number 3, the one with the delayed resolution. So that's the 6th string fingerings. Now you need a 5th string fingering too. So here it is. And also the sharp 5, 7 sharp 5. All right, so now you've seen the basic arpeggios in a couple of variations. You should practice them in different keys, in different positions, and memorize them. Get them under your fingers, practice them in different keys so you don't get too locked into just a single key and freeze when you have to do something different. Train yourself to be flexible because to improvise, you need mental and physical flexibility. So that's the arpeggios. What else do you need? Well, I suggest practicing some scales too. I imagine you already do that, but maybe you've been scared off by the don't play scales. Scales? Joe never used scales. Wes didn't even know what scales were, and Mary Lou said scales are stupid. Scales are evil, crowd. But ignore that, it's just clickbait. A Dorian scale fills in the gaps between arpeggio notes in a minor 7 arpeggio, and a Mixolydian scale fills in the gaps between chord tones in a dominant 7. I suggest practice these scales like this. Here's a Dorian from the 5th string, middle out. Here's a Dorian from the 6th string, middle out.
Middle out. Middle out. Middle out.
Mixolydian on the 5th string, middle out. And Mixolydian, 6th string, middle out. Here's a reminder of how some of these building blocks might go together to construct 2 5 lines that you can practice for soloing. Go back and revisit part 3 of this series for more on constructing 2 5 lines. Each lesson in this series builds on the last. Part 1 introduced passing 2 5s as a way to add flow and make your blues solos more jazz-like. Part 2 taught detailed lines with interactive backing tracks and exercises. Part 3 broke down the construction of those lines, and today in Part 4 we've covered specific practical exercises to help you build fluency. In the next lesson, we'll move beyond the blues to explore how these 2 5s work in other chord progressions. I think we'll leave it there for this video. Thanks for watching, and a big thank you to everyone who asks questions or leaves feedback. I really appreciate it. Happy teaching, happy playing, and may the jazz be forever with you. Bye for now.